Hey, everybody, and welcome to Authentic Points of View, Season 4, Episode 3. We are having technical difficulties because of me. I am transparent, honest. That's how I am. That's why the show's called Authentic Points of View. Why would I fib about stuff and have a show called Authentic, right? My fault for being late. We are doing things differently. If you've watched or listened to me before, if you're listening, hi, sorry. um, so if you have seen me before, right, it was just me. And occasionally it was her, maybe once or twice, but I did several seasons of just me. So we're learning different things, what to do. We're using different software and platforms. And so I did not give the guest did not have the correct one until last second. So that is my fault. So again, just being transparent. All right. So we are excited though today about today's guest. I'm excited for many reasons, and you'll find out as we're speaking with her. Safiya Omosanya is a occupational therapist, an EFT practitioner, and a trauma-informed life coach, and many more things. So we're so excited to have her.
Welcome, Safiya, to the show.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here, and I am sorry for my shenanigans.
It happens.
Yeah. So every time we're just literally learning like what to do and like different ways to do things with both of us, so we're not speaking over each other. So you and just being transparent, you may see us like looking down because we have to kind of organize what we're going to say, so we're not just saying stuff at the same time. But I really am excited to meet you and have you here. We've spoke previously, and um, occupational therapy was a big part of my life when my son was little, and I added it to my book. So we'll talk about a lot of things, though. So, what inspired you to become an occupational therapist and board certified mental health? And then, what exactly is an occupational therapist if people don't know?
Yeah, people still people still don't know. It's like you find jobs for people. um, it's interesting. I actually kind of fell into OT when I was in high school.
Wow.
I was kind of looking into like social work, and I used to work in this counseling office like in my lunch hour sometimes, and the counselor was like, "So what are you're going to do?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to go for," actually no, it was like sociology, right? She's like, "What are you going to do with that?" And I was like, "I don't know." I'm young, I'm a teenager, right? um so when I ended up going to college, no, this particular counselor was started telling me about physical therapy. She's like, well, if you want to work with people and you want to be in a rewarding field and you want to make good money, you want to go for physical therapy, because she knew somebody who was a physical therapist, right? So when I got to my college, they're like, oh, we don't have physical therapy here anymore, but we have occupational therapy, and it's kind of similar. And I was like, oh, okay, like I really didn't even know what I was. I'm young and impressionable, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but as I got into occupational therapy, I'm like, oh my goodness, thank goodness I didn't go for physical therapy, because I just couldn't even imagine myself being a physical therapist. But I used to work, I worked in different settings. So when I graduated, I worked in like rehab settings. I really didn't like that too much, because I would work like side by side with physical therapists. So it was physical stuff that we were doing. But I always kind of was interested more in how the mind works, and I was always kind of like into like mental health or whatever. And it used to be a time that occupational therapists actually used to work in mental health, like and they're still in some areas, not where I'm in the Chicagoland area. You just don't see many occupational therapists like doing mental health. But we started in mental health, right? So that was when I was in school and we took mental health class. I was getting 100% on everything, like every single assignment. Okay. And then the final exam, I'm like, I missed one, right? Cumulative exam. So
Wow.
it was, I was totally like, into that. But when I got in the field, I did like rehab, and then I worked with kids in the schools. I worked with in assisted living facility. Like I worked in every area of like OT. The only area I didn't do was like outpatient, like an outpatient clinic. Otherwise, and that's what I love about OT is there's that flexibility in the different areas that you can work in. So I worked in all the areas of OT. And my final area of working as OT was actually, using my degree to, because I got trained in EFT, emotional freedom techniques in 2012.
Yeah.
I started teaching that to other healthcare professionals. So that was like the last thing that I did in like OT. And since then, I've been kind of venturing out and working with people with like anxiety and like depression. And that's kind of where my love lies. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So just to clarify, so like if you weren't doing the mental health one, just so everybody knows, the difference between OT and PT is several things. So say for instance, this is true. I'm like, say for instance, I work in the surgery. So after surgery, I was working with just PACU, and then that's phase 1. So after they first come out, but now I do discharge. So other places I've done both, and they had occupational therapy and physical therapy they had to see before they left for same day joints. Okay, so like a hip, a knee, or something like that. Mm-hmm. With this hospital I'm at now, they only see physical therapy. But the difference between, because I always wonder too, like, why is there 2 of y'all? And I've actually seen both as well for my stroke symptoms. So occupational therapy would help with, not to take over the question, but like brushing teeth. Like when I had stroke symptoms and I was in an outpatient rehab, the occupational therapist made sure we could make dinner. I had to make spaghetti with people. It was really actually very fun. I was like, how is this therapy? I love it. It was fun. I had to make a bed. I had to fold laundry. Yes. Brush teeth. So like ADLs. Right. So activities of daily living. That's what occupational therapy would do. My son had occupational therapy to help him read again because he did like this cross brain training stuff. And so he has what they called Asperger's and ADHD. So they taught him exercises to help with that. A lot of things like, I don't even know how to explain it, but those kind of things. So there's a lot of really cool things, but occupational therapy to me would be more like mind stuff and how it affects things. And then physical therapy, basically physical. But so does that sound about right? Because you're the one that actually is trained in
right. Right. Occupational therapy. So they have like a slogan, like they help people live life to the fullest. That's like the slogan for occupational therapy on like their occupational therapy like organizational website. And so yes, that is true. Activities of daily living is what OTs focus on. So whatever is getting in the way of a person being able to do their activities of daily living, OTs would help them with that. And so in the case with like, kids, if they having problems like writing, because OTs can do things with like handwriting, and so that's another thing that, that's interfering with their school. So like for a kid, activities of daily living, what is called instrumental activities of daily living, actually. So there's ADLs and then IADLs, right? And so there's doing things out in the community. There's school, things like that. Being a parent, things that different roles that we have. And so anything that gets in the way, occupational therapists can help with that. Whereas, physical therapist is about physical mobility, so like, walking. Now, OTs, can they work with people's arms, right? And it would be like crazy because it'd be like you get the arms and I get the legs. So when I work with in some areas like OTs, you would see them working with the upper part of the body, right? And that's because that's what we, we're trained on how to work with the upper part of the body, so that like if a person has had, like a stroke or something like that, rehabilitating the upper part of the body so that they can, do their activities of daily living. That's what, OTs do. Whereas physical therapists about mobility and movement. So, but some places will just have a PT, because I knew a guy that was from like Africa that I used to work with, and he was like, I don't understand this, we just work with the whole body, so they can work with arms too. But they're not going to do ADLs. They're not going to be having you like cooking and washing and doing those types of things. So that's that's the difference. So
that's funny that you say that, because I have, for me personally, vestibular physical therapists, and they actually help me with something that, like some stuff that OT might do too. They help me with the mind, but brain, the connection to my body with my brain. I do a lot of stuff, like I would have to take a light and go in the maze.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of really cool things that they do, not just with mobility, but trying to teach my brain to like not have a trauma response to everything. So it's really fascinating.
Yeah, I don't want to minimize them. My husband's a physical therapist. I didn't be like, he'd be barking at me, but I know that physical therapists can do women health. I know a physical therapist that I follow on Instagram, and she does stuff with pelvic health and working with the pelvic floor. Awesome. So I don't want to minimize PTs.
No,
they do a lot too, but I'm just glad I went for OT. It was just better suited for me if I would have had to choose between the two. Yeah.
Okay. No, she didn't. Okay, go ahead. Just we're having a good time over here. Okay, so she thinks you already explained it. Ask it a different way then, McKenna. So EFT, she explained what it meant, but can she explain what does she do? So you can ask her that. Ask her. No, McKenna. Hi, this is live. Just ask her, please. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Just ask whatever you want to ask. Ask whatever. Maybe you want to know what it is. What does the EFT practitioner, what do they do? You can ask that. Okay, I just asked it. They're having a great time here. This is so nice. Okay, what is emotional freedom technique? Like, what does that entail?
Yeah, it's like Eastern medicine meets like modern, like Western psychology. Like that's how, when I was trained in it, that's kind of how they presented that. So they take some of the Eastern medicine, is with there's meridians that run through the body, and EFT practitioners have the clients to tap on the different meridians that are, on the body, and that's more of the Eastern medicine. And the Eastern philosophy was like, anytime there's anything, negative emotions or anything that happens negatively, it causes a disruption in the energy system in the body. And so some of the points that you would tap on are the same points that a acupuncturist would put like needles in, and that comes from like Eastern medicine. Now, where it's called emotional freedom techniques, they call it tapping for short, because we're tapping on different points on our body. But then the modern Western psychology part is, if there is whatever issues that one is having, you're speaking the issues out while you're tapping on these different points. And according to like the Western view, it's sending a signal to your amygdala in the brain, that part that turns on the fight or flight response, to say that you're safe, that it can calm down. So it's like a combination of the two. Eastern medicine says there's a blockage in the energy system, tapping on these points. It's kind of like, if you think about a hose that has a kink in it, and it's like tapping on these points kind of unravels that, and then the energy can flow smoothly through the body. That's the Eastern philosophy. And then the Western is communicating with our amygdala. So it's something I got trained in 2012, and just life changing for me in so many ways. Not only for myself, and the different anxiety that I had, because I had like social anxiety, which is crazy.
Wow.
And then, yeah, and then I ended up teaching this to in 12 states. And I remember, I remember thinking like, this is so surreal. Like, but when I first got trained in it, I always tell people it was like the heavens opened up. I'm like, oh, because I suffered with such anxiety, not just social anxiety, but just like generalized too. Just, oh my God, just like a wreck, right? And when I learned this technique, it was just so like powerful for me. And we actually, in my training, addressed when I was teased in grade school. That's how I ended up with social anxiety, because I was like teased in daily. And then it was one incident in front of the class where this guy called me a name and the whole class was laughing at me. So it was, yeah. So so I can laugh now, but when we were talking about it in our training, I'm crying like, you know, and I thought, but that was so long ago, right? But I didn't realize that's what had contributed to me having the social anxiety. So here I am now teaching the technique to different people in different like states. Like what? Like I'm in front of all these people doing this technique. It was so surreal for me. So it was helpful for me, and then it was something I was able to share with a lot of other people, and I do it with my kids, and it's just been a life-changing technique for me and many people that I've showed it to.
I love that. And I do it too with my mind body coach. And I actually was learning it as well, but I got a lot going on. So I kind of like paused getting certified in it. But yeah, so it's really awesome and helpful as well. And it kind of grounds you too. But I think that's awesome that you said that, and such a full circle moment. And I'm so proud of you. And I have one of those too with my public speaking. I failed speech class because I wouldn't go up and do my speeches, and now I'm a speaker, have a podcast. I'm a life, just like all these things. I did comedy on a stage where people were staring at me. Yeah. So I went from that to that. So that's so awesome that that helped you get out there and be able to help others now. So I'm really proud of you too, because it's hard. Like once you're like you have that fear, letting go of it can be pretty difficult.
Yeah.
Um, so, like I just mentioned, I'm a life coach too. I'm also a trauma and grief coach. So, I think it's amazing that you're a trauma informed life coach. It's very important for parents and kids to know what that is. And then we'll talk about generational, that kind of
Oh,
stuff. Because it's real. And it happens. But what are some of the ways that you help your clients? I know you talked about like depression and anxiety with the trauma informed coaching. Like, what are some ways that you help them besides relieving those things?
yeah. So first of all, like trauma informed is actually understanding how one's trauma, and even what trauma is, um, which I'll get to that in a minute, but just understanding how it's affecting one, in their daily life. And if it's not addressed, it will affect one. And so there's so many people that have anxiety and depression and chronic health issues, and relationship issues. And this all stems from trauma, right? Now, what is trauma? Because, a lot of times people think trauma is just like this big event that might happen to a person. And yes, that is true. It's a big event, but it's not about the event itself. It's about what happens inside of you as a result of what happened to you. Okay. So
Right.
that right there is, I think, a game changer, game changer information that I learned, that it's not about this big event. It's about what happens inside, and what happens inside, and you don't have, and this is a Dr. Peter Levine. I'm sure you might have heard of him, or maybe I don't know if you heard of Dr. Peter Levine, but he the founder of something called somatic experiencing. But he says he takes it further. It's without empathetic, witness. So it's like going through something and you're by yourself in it, and there's no one there to hold you through it. and you're alone in it. So what happens is when we go through something, it affects our autonomic nervous system, right? And it dysregulates our nervous system. And if there's no one to hold you through it, and you continue, experiencing whatever this thing with no support, then your system, your autonomic nervous system, remains dysregulated. And so a dysregulated nervous system is a nervous system where you're constantly looking for danger. It may be subconsciously or maybe consciously, that's where anxiety comes from. There's always a threat, there's always danger, but this is happening in your system where your system thinks the threat is still going on, right? And so if you don't do anything to re-regulate the system, it stays that way. And now this is where we end up seeing all types of issues, because if our system thinks that there's a threat, and what I mean by that, think of like there's a tiger running after us, then because that's what the system is thinking, then your different organs and everything else is not going to get all that it can get. It's gonna get less than optimal care, because all the resources in the system are going towards keeping you and surviving. So it's really the aftermath of whatever happened a long time ago. It's what's happening in our system, and it affects your physiology and it affects your biology. And now it affects your mind, and it affects your body, and it affects relationships, and it affects all areas of your life. So that's kind of my definition of what trauma is and what it does. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It kind of like can kind of hinder you from like moving on, and then you don't know sometimes what it was, like you said, like until you're going through something like maybe EFT, or like there's what CBT, cognitive, whatever, and then you're going back and you're saying like, oh my gosh, that's why I don't go to the swimming pool or something, like it's like a light bulb.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense, right? So that's really cool. So trauma can be, like you said, way more than something very, very huge, like a death or witness something or something. That's definitely traumatic, and we know that. But things like you said, somebody making fun of you, which I'm sorry that happened, or or calling you a name that affected you for your whole life until you kind of like break free of it and get help with it. So that's really awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead. She has a question.
What are some things that you would tell somebody with anxiety or depression?
With something, I personally, just like what I talked about with the nervous system, what I have found is being able to work with your nervous system, because your nervous system gets dysregulated when you experience something. And I just want to throw in too that what I've learned is it can be too much, too fast for too long, or not enough. Okay. And so, or too little or not enough, right? So it could be something like not enough love from your caregiver, not being listened to, not being heard, not being acknowledged, right? These are things, and I mean, I'm thinking about myself, and I'm just gonna put it out there, with my dad, I remember asking him a question. I just didn't exist, and it did something to my. No, I know, and it's interesting because I have 3 daughters, but I have a 10-year-old, my youngest. And she's so vocal because of the work that I'm in and everything. She comes and talks to me. And I'll go back to my original story, but I'm able to kind of remember my younger self from like watching her, right? So I'm working. I remember working, and I'm like, she's coming to talk to me, and I'm showing her way. And she says, your job is more important than me.
Aww.
Right? But she voices this, right? So now we get a chance to talk about it. I get a chance to tell her, oh no, you're very important to me, right? So then now she's not left with this wound of like, I'm not important, right? Well, for me, little me, when I was younger in that age, and I'm trying to talk to my dad and he's not listening, it did something in my system, right? It really did. It did something in my system. And I think that can help to, that can dysregulate our system because, you know, you're not feeling listened to and you're not, and I remember I didn't feel loved, right? So that is considered a trauma. Okay. So back to your question, when something happens in our nervous system gets dysregulated, it first goes into like what is called like a fight or flight response, right? And then if there's no attunement or there's nobody to help work you through that and give that support, it can eventually go into what is called a dorsal vagal state. So anxiety is fight or flight system in activation, okay, of the nervous system. And then depression is the dorsal vagal state has kicked in, which means if there's too much going on, too much fight or flight, at some point the system shuts down and says, I can't do this anymore. And it goes into a dorsal vagal state. And that's a lot of times what you'll see when someone is depressed. So what do I tell somebody who has anxiety or depression, which I work with people with anxiety and depression? We need to work with your nervous system to get your nervous system back regulated. Because at some point in your life, your nervous system has become dysregulated. And that's the case with everybody I've seen. So does that answer your question, McKenna? Yeah. Okay.
Good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So, generational stuff. Okay. So, cycles. Wow. I've talked to a lot of, which I love, a lot of coaches that just work just with that. That's it. That's all they do. And it's really important. And so, like, before, and I love my mom, she helps me a lot. If this was my mom and me, and I was not, because clearly something's going on. No offense, I love you. But so if this was us, I would have and made and like, and like, how dare you? But all I did was change it a little bit and say, what do you want to ask? Right? It's because I made up these questions. Maybe she wants to ask something different. And so I was a yeller. My mom was a yeller. I didn't realize I was a yeller until my mom, who was a yeller, said that I yell too much. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm out. I don't understand that. And so with her, now I have a big gap in children age. So my oldest is about to be 24 and in March. And then 21, he'll be 22 this year. Then 18, he'll be 19 in April. He's my bonus son. And then her. So I am blessed to have learned from things that I did when they were younger. They're all boys. And now I can change things now. Not so many parents aren't so lucky or blessed because you might have had kids 1-2 years apart. And you don't realize what you're doing. But with her, I feel like I did kind of try to break those things because I don't want that to be her story as well. But with you, why is it important for you to teach people about the breaking the generational cycles? And like, what exactly does that mean? I kind of explained it in my own way, but what does it mean to you?
Yeah. Breaking generational cycles is like, just like you said, your mom was a yeller, you became a yeller. It's the way the brain works. It's like, it says, however you're growing up, your brain is like a hardware, like, think on a computer, right? Everything is going in. And so your brain is like, oh, so this is the way a mom shows up. Okay. Note it, right? And it's just downloaded in you. And then, and maybe, you think, well, when I get older, I better be like that with my kids, right? Unfortunately, your brain has captured it and it's hardwired in there, right? And so me and my mom are close. And I always say that because when I tell people like some of this stuff but I've told people some of the stuff that she's done. It sounds harsh, but we are close. I have to throw that out there, right? But I just was thinking about, and she is, she's humble. So like I've talked to her and let her know, like, Mom, that's just, why did she's like, I don't know. I didn't know, right? Because my mom did it to me, right? So my grandmother would smack and, call names. And my mom, I would consider her, loving, right? But she did the same thing, right? I come home, I'm like 13, and a friend of mine had put some makeup on me, and I come in smiling to show my mom. I was like, "Hey, Mom," and she just smacked me. Okay,
wow.
yeah, she just smacked me, right? And so I guess she got scared and saw me with makeup on and thought, "Oh, this is not okay," right? So there was no conversation. Okay, like no conversation at all, right?
Wow.
So, I didn't know that that wasn't normal until later when I have my own kids, right? And I'm smacking. And my kids would take, because I have a 20-year-old, one that just made 17, and then a 10-year-old. And my 20-year-old and my 17, especially the 17, the middle one, these are all girls. The middle one, baby. Okay. But anyway, they'll be like, yeah, remember when Mama threw us across the room? And because that's what would happen. Like, I was a loving mother as well, but then you get out of control. Nobody gives you a manual. And they're talking back, and then next I'm smacking or flinging them across the room, right? So I was a mother who then I would feel guilty, right? So I was a mother who would get angry and then, jab out and then feel bad about it, right? So I did eventually, when I saw I was out of control, especially with my middle daughter, where she made me so mad, I kicked my youngest daughter's diaper bag and then knocked her down, right? And that's when I was like, okay, I'm out of control here. I started taking classes, like parenting classes, which were helpful. But honestly, like it would be like, oh, how to stop yelling and start connecting. So I at least started telling my kids, like, Mom's gonna try to do better. I'm sorry, if you see mommy getting, and not this is not even their responsibility, okay? But if you see me getting angry, just remind me to get back in my body, right? I started telling them that. So they're not get angry, then they get back in your body, get back in your body. And I'd be like, be quiet. Because at this point, I didn't get hijacked. My brain is hijacked, right? So so I was one of those, but I just wasn't okay with it. And so as I got into the self-development world and started working on, trying to be a better me. And I started like actually tapping, doing the EFT every day. Right. And I, because things would come up and I was like, okay, I'm going to start a daily tapping routine. And I started tapping every day as things were coming up. And then at some point, my brain got rewired because I stopped being crazy and snappy, right? It brought me back into control. And now that I understand about, now that I'm trauma informed and I understand what happens, and I always like to I have this big water jug, right? And so, our jug starts to fill up as things happen in life, right? And if we're carrying unresolved trauma, and then more of life stuff keeps coming up. So you have kids, those are stressors, no matter, no offense, McKenna, but it can be stressful having kids, okay? And so, just taking care of another human being, right? It's like, your life isn't just the same anymore, right? So you already have this, unresolved trauma you're carrying, and then, it starts, everything is filling up and filling up and filling up as life stressors start to happen, right? So what was happening as I was tapping every day, as I was emptying out the bottle, right? So that I had more reserves. I didn't have any before with a dysregulated nervous system on top of the stresses of the kids. So as I started to every day, just whatever, I would check in with myself and I say, is anything bothering you today? And he'd be like, yep. And then I would tap and just process it and get it out. And then eventually I just no longer was that like crazy, rageful mom, right? So What I would say is if a person wants to see, they want to show up differently, if they're that type of parent, because you have some parents that still, and I'm like the parents that still raise their kids old school. It's like, come on, it's just not going to work in these times. I'm sorry, we're in different times now, but that does still exist. But if a person is a parent that actually doesn't like the way they are being reactive and they feel completely out of control, there is things that one can do so that they can stop that, because their kids are going to do the same thing. And I'm sorry, they just are. And if they don't, if they don't become aggressive, like maybe a mom who has mom rage, then they're going to go the opposite way. They might be extremely passive and meek, but it's there's going to be effects in the next generation if somebody doesn't say it ends with me, right? It's gonna just keep going, because the brain is capturing everything, and the kids are picking that up through their brain and nervous system, period. So I think it's important for the next generation and the next generation, because it's like, at least I know at least three generations are at least affected by, so what happened in my grandma's life and her traumas is still affecting, me and my siblings now, right? At least three. They said possibly seven, but at least three for sure. Whoa. Yes, I've seen the different areas, possibly seven, but definitely three. There's going to be effects. So if the person doesn't want their kid to do the exact same thing, or have no emotional regulation skills because of what you did, then you got to go first. You cannot expect, because people will see their kids having all these problems and stuff, behavior issues and different stuff with the kids, and they're like trying to get the kids to improve. Sorry, it starts with you.
Right.
So
that's true. So really quick, McKenna has another question, but I just want to say, so the difference in ages. So like, I can yell with her, but that's after 50 times of her not listening. But I do not. That's not my first go-to. I don't try to raise my voice. But my second son, he says, like, how come she doesn't know the man voice? Because I was a single mom, and I am a single mom again. I was married in between, but I'm divorced. But he knew the man voice because he had a lot of diagnosis and did a lot of things that were harmful. And I would do this voice that, even though the case manager did not agree with it, would snap him out of it sometimes. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but I did. And so she would say, when she says, I'm yelling, I'm thinking, you haven't
say nothing, right?
Compared to what the voice does.
Yes.
So, what's your question, baby?
What are some ways that you would tell people how to like break out of their bad habits from generational change?
That's a good question. So the very first thing a person has to do is regulate their nervous system, because the nervous system, it holds the key to so many things, and your emotions, and if the parent is like blowing up and going crazy, that's because their nervous system is in fight response. Because that's what mine was. My nervous system was in fight. Okay, and then my middle child, she still is. She still is. I just have patience for her, because we would be in the ring together, like, right? And so as the parent, you ideally, without judging or shaming, because I was that parent, and where I thought, oh, my daughter, she is a mess, right? And this is all about her. She's so disrespectful and all of this type of stuff, right? But again, you do have to go first. And the very first step is to regulate your nervous system, because if your nervous system is in that fight or flight, then that's the ones that you're going to see, being enraged and things like that with their kids. And they do have to learn how to regulate their system so that they show up as a healthy adult and they model. Because see, you cannot expect something from your kid that you're not doing. Although old school parents, they do. Come to me like that, I did it. Who are you talking to? You don't talk to me like that, right? But I mean, I would be yelling and screaming at her, and I'm the one that kicked the bag and accidentally knocked her down, and I'd be out of control. So I'm expecting her to be something that I'm not. How, make sense, right? So as a parent, you have to go first, and you learn to regulate your nervous system, and you can be in a more calmer state. And I've taught my kids, they all know tapping, and my 10-year-old, and I still do like yell sometimes because I'm human, but like you, my other kids, like, that is just not fair, like, because she's like, you're being mean. They like, oh no, mom is soft with you, like, I don't know what you're talking about, right? But I let her call me out. That's another thing. I'm getting really good at validating her feelings and getting good at dropping the ego of, like, I'm the parent, you're the kid. I let her call me out. She's told me before, she said to me, I don't feel safe with you right now, right? And so, because sometimes in the morning time, getting ready for school, that's where we would have a hard time, right? So what I started doing is, before even getting her up, I would do some tapping in the morning so that I'm cool, because last year we did have a hard time where I'm like, get out the car. I did go there because she was like dragging and she's moving slow. And then I'm like, go, they're getting ready to close the doors. And she's just like, so I did raise my voice. And then, she said, I didn't feel safe with you. And I said, I understand. I'm sorry, and I'm going to work on that, right? So I apologize. You got to be good at apologizing, good at repairing, and letting them call you out. Like, the way you talk to me, mom, I didn't like that, and not having an ego, and just like allowing that, right? And I mean, that's that. I feel like I do a good job with that. And I say, I hope to one day not yell at all. I don't know if I can promise that, but what I can promise you is I will apologize. You can always come and tell me if you appreciate what I didn't do or say right or whatever. You can come to me respectfully and we can talk about it. That I can promise. So, does that answer your question, McKenna? Got it? Okay.
So I was going to ask you about conscious parenting, but is that what it is, what you just said?
Yeah, I studied that too. I studied conscious parenting, and that's when you are looking at yourself. It's not about the kid. Like, my middle daughter, she's my greatest teacher. I told her she's my guru, because my oldest, when she saw, like, okay, this lady can be crazy, she kind of went more docile, and she become more pleasing. Right. And so, of course, it was like, oh, I like her, it's my girl. Right. And then the youngest is the youngest, they're the baby. And so it's always different. But the middle one, she would be the one that always would challenge me. Right. Yeah. And as I got onto my journey, I think as I got onto my personal development journey, and just working on, dealing with my different wounds and stuff, it just naturally came up, like, the way we and her interacting, this is not good. This is not healthy. This is not gonna end well. So I got into conscious parenting, and I started to understand that, yes, she is my teacher. And she actually, what happened when I was younger, my mom cursed me. She said, I hope when you grow up, you have a daughter just like you, right?
Wait, time out. Sorry to interrupt. My mom said worse than you. So she's not saying for my son. Yeah. So she's not, well, she's she said worse. But my second son, it was not a daughter, but it was a challenge. Like you said, middle child. Yes. But he was the youngest at the time, though. He was not the middle. He was the youngest. But yeah, so
yes. Yes. So what I learned is she was basically letting me know that I don't accept and love all parts of you. There's parts of you I don't like. And so therefore that became what is called a shadow part. And I kind of, you got to stuff that part down, because it's like, well, this part is not acceptable, right? And so my daughter, when I took this class on, like, shadow, like learning, understanding the shadow. And And it was like, okay, if there's someone that you have an issue with, like write down some of your judgments about them, right? So I wrote down, you are so disrespectful. You are this. And then I started laughing because I'm like, oh, this is all that I was told about me. She's me. So when we're getting into it, I'm getting into it with a part of me that was unacceptable, right? So I said, okay. So then that's when I started to learn how to like accept that aspect of me. And then I said, let me treat her the way the younger me wanted to be treated. Let me talk to her the way I want, you know what I mean? And that's when our relationship started to shift. So yeah, it was definitely that's conscious parenting where you as the parent, you look at yourself and you see your kid as a teacher and it's showing you, it's like mirroring to you your stuff that needs to be worked on. So yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's awesome. And it's such a great point too, because that's the thing. Like, did I like being yelled at? No, I was scared. I didn't know what was gonna happen, right? And so I didn't even realize that I was doing it at the time that like, and again, not making excuses. I should not have done that. But my second son, woo wee mama, it was a lot, right? And I was a single mom. I was young. I had them at 18 and 20. He was very violent and doing a lot of things. He's great now. He's 21. He's a dad. He's doing wonderful things. He's a great man, great young man. He's very spiritual now. He's just totally different. But at the time, I was always overstimulated and on like 100%. He never slept. He like it was just a lot. But I love him. Again, not his fault. That's my fault because I could have reacted differently, right? So I think that's really important. And it's how we perceive stuff ourselves. Am I boring you?
I had a competition last night, so I'm really tired.
She did. Oh, do you want to? Not that this show is about that. You want to say what place that you got?
Oh, we got first place.
Yes.
What type of competition and what was it?
It's Winter Guard and it's Sapa.
I have no idea what that is.
People don't know what that. Right.
So Winter Guard is where you have flags and taped up in wood rifles and like
sabers,
and you do tosses and tricks with them, and then you also do dances. And so it basically just takes a lot of practice, and you have to throw it up like you can't just go weave. You have to like throw it up as high as you can. And it goes like.
Wow, that's so cool.
It was a long day.
And like an hour away. I just had one last weekend too.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was a chaperone, and it was really fun. But yes, it was a tiring day. But such a blessing that she gets to do those things. I did the flag corps and marching band. Didn't know there was a Winter Guard. Moved to Georgia. My oldest son did it in 2019. His senior year, he decided to do it. They needed some boys to, he looked like a grown man. He's like 6'2", but he's 17. So they needed some men to like help, boys, whatever. And so there was a couple of guys that did it. And so we got to see it then. And it's really cool. I didn't know they had it in middle school, and she's in 6th grade. And so it's really neat. And we, our high schoolers also got first place. So all of us, both of our groups got first place, so it was really cool.
Awesome.
Everybody, they did really great.
And also, a lot of people don't know this, but there's a difference from color guard and Winter Guard.
Oh, see, I had heard of color guard, but not Winter Guard.
Color guard is outside.
Yeah.
So a way to remember that is winter is cold, so it's inside.
Oh,
that's good.
Okay.
You ready?
Oh, back to on topic. If you could go back and talk to your 13-year-old self, what would you say?
You're important. I see you. I hear you. I love you. And just be yourself. Just be you. You don't have to try to fit in with anyone else. Just be yourself.
Yeah. I love that answer. And that leads us to our next question, which these two questions are new for this season. And I think it's important because she's a young lady and like her seeing stuff from her point of view and the perspective of I was back in the hallway with all these. There's one young man and there's a whole bunch of females, like a lot, and listening to their how they think and all that, and I'm like, oh my goodness, and I have to put myself in their shoes because these times are so different, and the social media and the this and the that, and there's all this like, oh, we have to look a certain way, which there was back in the day when I was a kid, but it's just so different. It's like before I would see 20 people wearing Abercrombie and Fitch. I was not that person. I didn't wear brands because I paid for my own stuff a lot. But there was this pressure of that by seeing it. But now you see millions of people on social media, commercials, all that stuff. So the last question that we started asking is about like authentic self. Like, how would you tell somebody to be their authentic self?
Yeah, it's interesting because, and I know a lot of people may say, well, I don't even know who that is, right? Yeah, because me personally, like I wasn't my authentic self, and that's one of the number one things that I am working towards now is being my authentic self. And I think, and this is a tough one too, though, but I think you first got to work with regulating your nervous system. You got to get out of that survival mode to even be able to have access. But to listen to kind of your gut and your body and its cues and what it's saying, right? Because I know, like for me, I was a chameleon, and especially after being like teased or whatever, I just kind of lost all hope in humanity. And so I was just like, okay, I did not let people get close to me. I just superficial conversations, like you say the sky is red, and I'm just like, oh yeah, it sure is, right? Like just kind of going along, just to kind of like fit in or whatever, and just not even really knowing. So once the person starts to get out of that survival and kind of work through some of those wounds, I think you can have that better connection with yourself. But if you don't first start to regulate your system, I don't think one could totally have access to that, because our nervous system is doing things behind the scenes that even if we wanted to change at a behavior level and just tomorrow I'm going to show up as my authentic self, and then but then you get in a situation and your nervous system is going to do what it's primed to do, and so for me it would be like lights, camera, action. Right? Because I saw my mom kind of acquiesce, right? Because she grew up in like a home that was violent, right? And so she had to acquiesce, right? So that's what I saw. You just kind of put on a performance. You tell people what they want to hear, and the nervous system is doing this. So first you got to get your nervous system regulated, right? And then you have a vision for like, well, how do you want to show up in the world, right? Because there's plenty of times I might have said yes to things I wanted to say no to. And so it's learning to kind of listen to that internal, and what is it saying? Like, what, somebody says something like, do you want to do this thing? Do you feel like constriction in your body? Like, I don't want to do it, right? Because I would like override that, right? My body is saying no here, right? And then when it's a yes, there's an expansive, and you feel kind of like warm and fuzzy, like, right? So, but it's learning how to like listen to your body. But you really can't do that until you first start to work on regulating your nervous system. So that's the first thing. But authenticity is listening to the internal. That would be what I would say.
Yeah. Awesome. Yes.
I have one more really quick question. So my friend from 5th grade had a huge trauma when he was not little kid. It was the year before that. Should I say it?
Don't say his name.
I won't.
You can say what happened.
So his mom died when he was younger. And if I told him to watch this, what would you say to him?
No.
Yeah, that's a good question. So when his mom passed away, he didn't have that, because again, when it comes to, it's not so much the trauma itself. Now, losing your mom is like a big devastation, right? But was there any safe people to like hold him through what he was going through? Because
Well,
that's important.
he had his dad, but he was always busy, he said.
Oh, see,
Well,
that's the thing. Yeah. How old is he now?
11.
11. Yeah, he needs support. He needs support to be able to work through those feelings that he probably has never really been able to express. And so, yeah, if he doesn't get any support through that, then it could definitely be imprinted in him and can cause things in the future. So for him at a young age, he needs some support, like a safe adult to kind of support him and kind of talk to him and work with him through what is he feeling and where is he feeling it in his body, because that's where emotions are, stored in the body. And I'm sure he has some emotions that are just stored and stuff down that nobody was able to hold him through and process. So safe person or safe people that he can express what he hasn't been able to express around how he's feeling and what he's feeling in his body is what I would recommend.
Poor thing. Yeah, it's hard. And also, I just want to say that a lot of stuff I do is because of my brother that passed away. And a lot of boys or men are told that they're not allowed to have feelings or talk about their feelings. So all I want to say with that is, and I'm going to try not to cry, probably will cry, because I'm looking right at my book, which is my brother's face. But you have every right to speak about your feelings, to have feelings, to have them be heard. So please don't keep it in, and don't think that it's not tough or whatever to, not like, oh, boys aren't allowed to speak about this or whatever. That makes me, no, you're allowed to, because you're a human and you deserve everything. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to be free from whatever you're feeling and to get better and to heal. So don't be scared ever. As a male, find a safe person, like she said, find a safe adult that you can talk to that will help you and support you, because you have every right to express your feelings just like everybody else does.
Absolutely. We were given all of these emotions for a reason. And I really do hate that males aren't, taught to be able to do that. Now, fortunately, we are, we're in different times now. Yeah. And I'll just say this to kind of wrap it up. It's this one guy that I, follow on Instagram, and he teaches men how to heal the wounded little boy so that they can become the like empowered man, right? So there are men out there now that are working with men who, because if you have this wounded little boy that never was able to express your emotions, you will not be a good partner to your wife. You will not, if you have daughters, you will not be able to hold her emotions because you can't be with yours. Like, there's so many consequences of males not being able to feel their emotions and process their emotions. And so I just hope it stops. Like, I want all boys to know all your emotions matter.
Right.
That's my take on that.
Yes, I agree.
Where can we find you? Like, what are your social media handles?
I can be found on LinkedIn. That would be the place that I would say. My name's Safiya Omosanya. If you have my name listed somewhere, they can just go to LinkedIn and find me.
Okay. She's gonna type it. Okay. So thank you so much. We're supposed to put a banner at the bottom. Again, we're like learning and having a good time doing it. So thank you so much for coming on, for being an amazing guest. You should have put her name, baby.
Oh.
Here, I actually have it. Look, this is so, listen, it's live, y'all. I can't make this up. It really is. And authentic is what we are. Yes. Okay. I was gonna show you it. It's right here. This is hers. Okay. Anyway, sorry y'all. I know we're a little bit over, and I also was late, so
We were late, so
here you go. There it is, right there.
it's
But-
okay. I'll just look over here.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. So, anyways, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for being so transparent and honest about your story and things that you did with your girls and changed so they won't do it in the future. You're awesome. Thank you for all your work. The trauma stuff, it can be heavy, and I know from my experience. So anybody that's in that space is awesome, and not letting it affect us in our daily lives, is really challenging, but it's awesome. So is there anything else you would like to say before we get done?
Yeah, just first step to healing is work on learning how to regulate your nervous system. Let's start there.
Okay. So have a great day, everybody. We are on, this is going to be different. Next week is at 7 p.m. Eastern time, not 3. So if you're looking for us at 3, I will be at work. I work that day. It's going to be a long day for me, but that's okay. I love doing what I do. So I will see you guys at 7 p.m. next week. Thank you so much again. You're amazing. You have a great day, and see you next time, guys.
Bye.
Bye. She's teaching me what to